Welcome everyone to this very special episode of Enlightened Masculinity, where we have our special guest, Bryan Casella of Team BC. He is someone that I admire and look up to greatly and listen to. There's only a few people that I really just, when I listen and I open up, and he's one of those guys. And he, he's a social media influencer and, real estate extraordinaire, sales and influence and negotiations. And so we have some great questions for him today. And if you're catching this, leave us a review on iTunes. Be sure to, leave a comment and let us know what you think of the show today. We also have our co-host, as usual, Akash Inti from Montclair, New Jersey. I was just thinking, do you care that I say your last name, or like your name everywhere is Akash Inti? So
yeah, that's cool.
Akash Inti.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. All right. Akash Inti Katakam, biotech research analyst and registered yoga teacher, hosts Airbnb retreats there in Montclair. And me, of course, Yogi Chris, founder of Ninth Limb Yoga Brand, world traveler, and lots of other things, PhD learner. Okay, so Bryan, I have a question for you right off the bat. And it's really probably going to come and be an outpouring of like 2 or 3 questions. And this is really just how to break through to the next level, how to really like get precise on what needs to go and what to double down on, what is, how to get clarity on what activities got to get cut. You know what I mean? For success.
Okay. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So let's get right into it. Whenever somebody's going to do something new, especially if they're learning from the right people, right? Our circle obviously has tremendous amount of teachers and talent that guides people in the most simple and effective ways, right? And I can just walk you through my world. I first started with real estate, right? I was coming from a professional basketball career and completely doing like a 180 into sales. And at the time, I was a little bit lost, didn't know what to do at that particular moment. I think it was 2012, somewhere 2011 or 12, when I decided, okay, I'm going to get my license. Social media is not as big. You can't find as much stuff on YouTube for free. Google is a resource, but at that time I wasn't as much of an avid reader as I am now. So I kind of despised looking at letters on the screen. And I'm like, okay, I want to get into real estate. I need to break this down into a simple thing. So I started thinking about my days in basketball and remembering how simple things were. It was 1 or 2 things you had to focus on to learn a new technique to dribble or shoot. The mechanics are very simple. So I said, okay, I need to kind of find those 1 or 2 things that I need to do in real estate that are going to just get me started quickly and propel me to the next level. And when I looked at it, I said, okay, I need to do 2 things. I need to generate leads and I need to get skills. And that's it. So everything, my first 18 to 24 months revolved around those 2 activities: finding clients and getting very good at communication and sales. And as you can see, I have a special guest right here who poked his head out, Mr. Cat, Mr. Farrow. So 2 things, and that's it. And what I believe the mistake is that people make nowadays is they, for whatever reason, they overcomplicate things. So instead of just doing those 2 things, they'll listen to me say it, and they'll, in their own mind, have a discussion and say, well, it can't just be that. It can't be that simple. There has to be more. And I get those messages all the time. So that's kind of the process that I did, is I looked laterally, we can say it's something I did previously, and said, well, that was simple. I need to take that mindset and apply it to this, and it'll be just as simple. And, and that's where the story began. And I had tremendous amount of success in the first 1.5 years or 2 years compared to other people. But because I simply, as Chris said earlier, I doubled down on those 2 things, and I put my head down and I never looked back.
Yeah, this is interesting, Bryan. One of the things that I've noticed that you've taken to the field of real estate, not only being a really young realtor, quote unquote, a lot of people are usually in their 40s and 50s when they start, but is your unconventional approach and your unconventional beingness. A lot of people I know have been like, I can imagine hearing that crowd being like, YouTube, like that's just garbage. Like, what are you even thinking about? What was your mindset, or how did you approach a field that was very like traditional and conventional with this unconventional approach and yet still be successful? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in my mind, that was two separate things, right? The first things that we were just discussing, I knew regardless of how I was packaged or if I was unconventional or conventional, I knew those things would make me successful, right? The other aspect of what you just brought up, I looked at that as almost like branding and marketing. And I said, you know what? I have to adopt something like this because this is what's going to allow me to break out onto the scene. A lot of people who exhibit some of these qualities of being outspoken, right? Not sounding like the traditional realtor. A lot of them are almost shunned right away because the first thing that everybody looks at is, well, are they successful? That's almost like your way to get in, your golden ticket to make it, right? Is, are you actually succeeding? So in the beginning, I was unconventional and received a tremendous amount of criticism, but I knew it would be that way. And I said, okay, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before people start looking a second time and saying, wait, but this guy's successful. And then they get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. So in the beginning, it was a lot of resistance, a lot of laughter, a lot of passive aggressive comments and things done to me. Even when I was invited to speak at places, people would try to, passively aggressively diss me or something. But I said, my time is going to come. All I need to do is hold my ground, right? And continuously do what I'm doing. And once I reach a certain threshold of success, they will have no other option but to accept me and look at me now and say, wow, obviously there's something here because he was able to do it. And that beginning stage, you do receive a lot of criticism. And that's kind of like the test, right? That's where most people fold and break. And I said, no. I need to stick to what I'm doing and let the success meter continue to rise, almost like a thermometer. As it's heating up, it goes up. And once I hit this threshold right here, I know I can enter the room. And once I enter that room of success, we can say, then the game really begins.
Wow, brother, okay, here's a question. This is amazing. And just almost kind of picking it up from the last one, I almost have like two questions, but I'll just go into this one. I have a second income stream, so I have my main income stream, or that my more, let's call it my, it's longer lived, it's got longevity income stream, it's stayed consistent. And the new income stream that's sporadic and it competes well, it sometimes earns more. And so what do you do when the second income opportunity comes? And, if you had any questions for me, I could keep going on and on about it. I enjoy them both tremendously, and I want to keep doing them both. And so do I just go parallel with both of them, or what do you think?
It's a great question, Chris. And I think a lot of people run into that dilemma at some point where they're presented with other opportunities, like when people maybe came across Bitcoin or something else in the beginning stages, right? And they're like, oh, I want to jump on this, or this is an opportunity. What really helped me was, because I went through the same things in my, first 2 or 3 years in the game of real estate, is I wanted to make sure that the stream, right? Because my first question back to you, and you don't have to answer it, would be that first stream that you have, is that something you want to continuously do forever or throughout your whole career? And if the answer is yes, then obviously that's where the focus needs to stay. Because for me, I have 8 income streams now, but the main focus and main foundation is still that initial real estate income stream that I created years ago and that's continuously building. And when that's at a point where now you can afford to maybe step away a little bit and not be so in it, right? You have some leverage in place, you have some assistance, you have some sort of automation or something to keep that thing going. And it's not going to run dry while you're focusing on your second or third one. That's the time you can do it. But if you're still at a point, or anybody listening, where the moment you take your attention off the first stream, it's already leaking and it's going crazy, then that's an indicator that you need to still double down on that first one and get it to the point where maybe it's not making you, $100,000 a month, but where it's stable and you can rely on, hey, I have that 2, 3, 4, 5,000 coming in every month. Now I can pivot over here and start building this without the first one suffering. And I think people get in a position where they're going after the second one because it seems lucrative. And in that process, they may have some success, but they completely run that first one dry, or they lose all that momentum they built over the last 3 months, 6 months, and year. And now they play this juggling game where it's just, you're running from one pipe to the other one, trying to fix leaks instead of building. You know what I mean? So I would always suggest that somebody builds the first one and makes it super, super solid before they start adding
Can you guys hear me, or is Brian, am I the one with the bad reception? We still here? We still here?
My real estate business, had I actually had maybe some money to get some of those new up-to-date systems I couldn't afford in the beginning, or to advertise a little bit or put it towards social media, I could have grown that first one much quicker. So by the time I start the second one, and let's say it was my stream of products, which I was releasing once a month, which I did for a long time. If I actually had some money back then to get a videographer, and help me, and some of those things that I didn't have in the beginning, it's so much easier and faster. And by the time I opened that second one, I did have some money and some time to put into it. So building that second and third and fourth and fifth income stream to me was almost like taking candy from a baby, because everything was so well established with the first one that it gave me all the time that I needed and the additional resources required to do so. Because then I could get to the point where this pipeline is full, and I can automate this one and systemize it quicker by putting people in place, systems in place, software in place to help it grow. Because I wanted to eliminate any task from the first one all the way through the eighth one that isn't the highest income producing activities for me. So when it comes to the social media, or the second or third income stream, if we're talking YouTube and online stuff, anything outside of me being there for a live call or producing the content, I want to take out of my hands as quickly as possible. Emails, right? Editing, sending out the automation in emails, the reminders, organizing events, all that stuff I want to get off my plate. Now, if I have resources, I can purchase the systems and software and people that I need to put in place. And that's exactly what was done, that I had a grind in the beginning for this one, where I had to work, generate income, pay myself, pay my expenses, put a little bit aside for this future endeavor of systemizing. And I had to do that over and over, rinse and repeat, until I had my pot of gold here, my money to now implement leverage and all those other things. So by the time I went to the second one, that money was already there, and it was more about just boom, 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 put it in place, insert, second stream is ready. Boom, 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 third one, ready. So my second through 8 came, so people have the proper timeline. First 3 years, one income stream to build it and make it good. And it's going to keep growing, right? Now, when I pivot to the other ones, in the next 2 years, I got 6 more. So 3 years to build one, 6 more in the next 2 years. If I gave that timeline to people and I said, if you just worked hard and focused on your one stream for 3 years, I guarantee you'll have at least 4 or 5 more in the next 2 years. The following 2 years after that, would you focus on the first one? Everyone would say, well, hell yeah. That's what I did. And that first one, once it's solid, it just facilitates everything else, right? It's like almost as if you created this waterfall and now the water is running and it just goes.
It's funny because, Brian, you're actually, right now, I don't know if it's your hypnotherapy, NLP certification or whatever it is, but I was regressing. And I was remembering that my very first income revenue stream from doing what I do was actually products. It was a hand mudra product. And that predates Silent Flute, and that predates Travel Yogi, really. You just got me thinking. You definitely got my gear spinning. I want to ask you about, I know we're kind of around a lot. What's that?
I've got a question if you don't mind if I interject.
Oh, am I doing 2 in a row, or I thought you went?
Go ahead.
I think we were alternating. That's why I jumped in. But maybe,
okay, my bad.
Maybe I lost track. I don't know. If in the recording it is, then I'll owe you one next time or something. But because that's how we do it here at Enlightened Masculinity. We just divide up the spoils, and Brian is up to the chopping block right now. But no, seriously, you're really cutting to the point. And I was thinking in a prior question, I was thinking about the importance of scripts. I was looking at my script, and I was taking it semi-serious. I'll be honest. I know, but what had happened is I had put off my calls too far, that I was like ready to get calling. But I was looking at my script through new eyes, that I was like, oh, this could use some work and smoothing out and memorizing so that the calls can be more accessible maybe. I was looking at it like that. What advice would you have for me? And thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're at a point, Chris, if other people don't know, you've been cold calling for a while. You basically have a gist of your script, you know it, you have it internalized. That's the point where you can start with what you've learned and, the feedback you've gotten, which is a part of the formula. I need to use set script X amount of times to receive enough feedback now to make adjustments and see what's working and what's not, right? And that's part of it. You learn, and then you also gather the experience, which then gives you everything you need to start going back in our back caves and figuring out, hey, how can I improve this? How can I make it better? So that's perfect. As long as the calls continue and the adjustments never get in the way or hinder the calls. You're like, wait, I can't call today because I have to work on my script. As long as the calls are still being made and you're making the adjustments on the fly and making your improvements and what you see fit, that's naturally going to occur, because there's a saying out there in sales where when you finally learn the script, they say you make it your own. And that's basically what you're doing. That's a manifestation of that, right? That's eventually where if we all use the same script, if somebody comes back 2 years later, we've all made our own little minor adjustments and we're all going to deliver that same script a little bit differently.
Well, I guess if I could refine, just piggyback on that really quick, because I invented my script. There was not a yoga travel sales. I don't know. Maybe there is somewhere if I look for like traveling salesman script or something. But I just invented it, So I have like what I leave for a voicemail, and then if I get a hold of somebody, is there the decision maker, and get the decision maker, and then introduce depending on time constraints, and then blah blah blah. If it goes, my script basically goes if it goes perfect, and then there's a long list of objections that have various different ways to like handle that. And what could you say, if any, advice on how I've organized my script or how I could improve it?
Yeah, script building is pretty simple, actually, right? Obviously, I want to make sure that I'm getting a hold of the actual decision maker, whatever it is that I'm selling, the person who makes the decision, get a hold of them. And then from that point, what I do when I build a script is I look at the interaction from the outside, right? So I look objectively at myself, or if I can make up a salesperson and the customer, and I think from both perspectives. I think, okay, if I'm the customer, right, what would be the main things going through my mind if I have a need for this product or service, right? And if I'm the salesman and maybe they don't want to say it, or we don't have enough rapport yet, how can I ask these questions to get that information out? And that's kind of how I start piecing it together. So when I looked at the script that I was given for real estate, it made sense. It asked simple questions like how long somebody's lived there, why they decided to move to that city. And then near the end, it starts asking some open-ended questions to see what you can pull out, such as, if you were to move, where do you think you would go next? And then opens up the conversation. So basically, I'm looking at that. And then obviously, I need to have a certain parameter as a salesperson to basically designate the individual that I'm contacting. Are they qualified for my product or service or not? And obviously, the shorter the better. My script was always no more than 5 or 6 questions. And if I felt like they were qualified or they started giving off the vibe of being qualified, then I would go deeper, right? But I wanted to be respectful of my time and theirs, get in and get out as quick as possible. So that's basically the structure of the script that I would use to create it. And, it's really simple. I think anything other than that or making it too long is just too complicated.
So it sounds like there's an open, there's a qualify, and then there's a go into the actual sale of the thing. And so these are like distinct phases where I would have a different tonality for like an open, and then a different tonality and mannerisms and whatever for the qualifying. And then, okay, now we're in deeper, and then there's the close, I guess would be, I'm just understanding this from how you're talking and it's tripping me out. Yeah. And then there's a different tonality from the close maybe, or how would you, that's the end. That's the last question. I swear, Akash, I swear, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it shifts. If I can even think of me when I'm talking to people in the beginning, it's very just innocent, very like, oh, hey, what's up? Very almost nonchalant. As we're starting to qualify, it might get a tad more serious, but I also add in a bit of empathy because I'm normally hearing I'm going through a divorce or this situation popped up, and I have to really hear people out as they give me their story. And in my industry, right, if somebody's going to buy a home or sell a home, in most cases, it's a new chapter, it's a big step. And for most people, it's exciting. So near the end of, me qualifying or talking to somebody, there's typically a little bit more energy and enthusiasm in there because, hey, this is a big step for them and I'm excited for them. So you're absolutely right. It does change. And there will be a varying degree of difference depending on who you're talking to as well, because of personality types and all those kinds of things, and what their emotional state is when you call them and you catch them. And we know that can fluctuate like crazy. So a lot of that is developed, not just from learning, but from, again, that in-field experience of going door to door and making calls and failing forward in a sense of making so many mistakes that you start learning. The key for people is to not really look at it from that perspective, but just look at it as feedback. That way, when you go, you can start spotting patterns. If you notice a certain personality type or a certain objection that you're getting over and over, then you can say, hey, what am I doing in my process that's causing this to occur over and over, and how can I fix it? Now you can really start piecing together all the tools that you need to become a master.
Yeah, Brian, last question, I guess, before we cut off the episode itself. As you were growing out, I guess, the first business itself, you were obviously, like you mentioned, you were giving other people tasks to do for you that would optimize your time to be spending it on where you can make the most money, I guess, or cut a process more efficiently. Yeah. Can you talk about, I guess, that process of as you're starting to identify people to work with you or work alongside you? What are qualities that you're looking for in these types of people?
Yeah, definitely. When I'm hiring somebody, the way that I did it was a little bit different. One of the main things that I preach to people all the time is to grow, obviously, their brand online, because in a sense, everybody who I brought on, aside from maybe just my girlfriend, has been people that I've attracted online, right? And that's the beauty in having some sort of presence on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube is you start attracting people that are like you. So that already, in a sense, makes an individual who may be interested, if they follow me, a little bit more qualified, right? Because we vibe, they kind of like my beliefs and philosophies, and we kind of ride for the same team in a sense. But when I'm looking at these individuals, the biggest thing I'm looking at is, I kind of call it the X factor. It's something you can't really find from a personality test per se, right? Because I know that's big, the DISC test and all that stuff. Are you a high I, a high D, and all that, which is cool, but that's never the final word for me. It's somewhat the person's ability and willingness to be coached, but it's also desire, right? Like, we know that when we interact with somebody, if they have a genuine desire and if they really feel what they're saying, right? So if they come to you and they're like, hey, Akash, I want to work with you and blah, blah, blah. If we talk to 20 people, we know the one who's the real deal and the person who's really like, I'll do whatever it takes. Like, we know that energy. We can feel that. That's what I'm looking for. You know why? Because that person typically on paper isn't the best. They might not come in with all the skills, but I see them as this wet clay that's willing to be molded into a masterpiece. And that's the way I look at it, right? So everybody who I've brought on my team, again, aside from my girlfriend, on paper was probably one of the worst and least qualified. But I saw that X factor in them to get better. And I knew if I put my teachings to them and my time and energy, I could make them into that salesperson and whoever it is that they wanted to be outside of that. And I've done that. So that's the main thing that I'm looking for, guys, because that to me is by far the most important.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, some of the programs that you have? I've been a part of your Modern Success program, and it's absolutely incredible. I've learned so much from the lectures, from all the people in the community itself. But I wanted to hear, I guess, a little bit more from your perspective. I mean, how did you put this together? Just a little thing at the end of what's this community of Modern Success? Yeah,
absolutely, man. When I got into real estate, I noticed, even learning from Akash and some of our mutual mentors, and Vince, whatever world we join, it just happened to be real estate for me. The people that are in it, even the ones that teach there, for the most part, a lot of them, it's very narrow-minded, meaning, okay, well, we're getting into real estate. We just have to learn about real estate. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters except for real estate. And I realized that a lot of people coming in, just like myself, were lacking a lot of skills and knowledge in different areas that would ultimately make them not only a better person, but more effective in this field of real estate and sales. So as I started piecing that puzzle together, I thought, me being a little bit naive, I said, well, everybody has access to this information. Everybody has a desire to get better. We're all good people. So everyone else must be learning this stuff. And as I started putting my voice out more and just looking left and right at my peers, I noticed that I was accelerating a lot more quickly than them, we can say, and they didn't even realize what they were missing. So again, I produce more content, I accelerate more, and it becomes blatantly obvious to me at that point. I was like, whoa, okay, obviously this is something that people aren't seeing. I thought it was obvious. So partially from that, partially by demand, I just said, you know what, I'm going to create a coaching program. And it originally started with Akash. We did close the deal. There was almost uniquely 100% focused on sales. And then when I decided to do modern success, I wanted to open it up more, you know, and add some of these things, like some failures that I've had, for example, in the financial realm. I said, you know what, that's huge. A lot of people struggle. I think like 88% of people don't have more than $1,500 or $2,000 in their checking account, right? Their main checking account. So obviously money is an issue for a lot of people. Well, if I've cracked that code, learning the hard way, why not teach people some of these lessons? So, you know, I just put together this program and said, this is what people need, because overall, it's going to make them better, not just in their field, but overall. And that's really the focus. And I think that's why it's having so much success. And I have about 300 people in it right now, and it just keeps growing because people are finally starting to grasp and see what it is that I saw years ago.
Where can people find you on social media, lastly, before we close out?
Just my name, @Bryan Casella, for all my social media handles, or you can go to my website at bryancasella.com. It's really simple.
Awesome. Stay tuned, guys, for next episode with Bryan right now.